Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCourcy and Matt Watson.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCourcy here with Matt Watson. Hi, Matt.
What's going on, man?
Oh, just chilling out, getting ready to record another episode of Startup Hustle, which, by the way, is brought to you by Fullscale.io.
It is?
Yeah. I'm getting better at that.
Why are you sitting on a pile of cash?
Well, it's the guests we have today. They brought it with them, and the amazing thing is the whole field of raising capital
Sucks.
It does. It's rough. Episode 2 of Startup Hustle is titled "Getting Funded Sucks" for a reason. But with that and the challenges that come with raising capital, there are alternative forms of raising capital. Yeah.
Really?
And we are going to discuss that today. So with us, we've got Keith Harrington and Carlos Antequera of Novel Growth Partners. They are co-founders and managing directors, and I think they're really excited to be here, right, guys?
You better believe it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
So as we get started, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the mic and let you talk about what you do at Novel Growth and why that is alternative, and then we'll have a conversation about alternative capital.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having us here today.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks very much. So at Novel, we do capital a little bit differently. So we are not a traditional venture capital firm. We provide capital to early stage companies using something called revenue-based financing, which is a way where we actually provide capital to a company and then they pay us back over time with what you can think of as a royalty on the money that they're collecting in revenue from product and service sales. So it allows us to provide a meaningful amount of money to early stage companies in a way that is a little bit different. And different, I think, in some important ways. First, we're not really buying equity in the company, so we don't have the pressure to get a company to an exit, and the CEO of the company doesn't have to find a way to get to some massive outcome. And we also provide quite a lot of help along the lines of sales and marketing. We kind of view sales and marketing as the ticket to the promised land. That is, if a company knows how to sell its product in a repeatable and predictable way, then they can get to wherever they want to be. They can run the company however they'd like into perpetuity. They can grow quickly and get to an exit. They can do whatever they like.
Well, very good.
That was very wonky and right into the weeds.
No, I mean, it really wasn't. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Revenue-based financing, funding based on, I'm sure there's a whole number of factors that could go into that. Now, as business people, what are your backgrounds and what led you to forming Novel?
Yeah, I think that's maybe one of the key elements about why we're doing what we're doing right now. My background is from an entrepreneurial space. I had the opportunity to build a enterprise software company for over 14 years along with a couple of co-founders. And one of the challenges in that process was the experience of fundraising, right, in person, going through what entrepreneurs go, the earliest stages. And in particular, in my case, I had an enterprise software company in the education space, which for a lot of people is a space that they don't find very appealing from an investor standpoint because they understand of the cycles and the difficulty of changing that market. And so as I was growing my company and I had some initial success, some mentors and other entrepreneurs that had been in the space said, hey, you're growing well. What you should do is you should go raise some money. So like, well, how do I do that? Well, you go to talk to angels and talk to venture capitalists. So as we were probably around the $1 million mark, over 100 customers, that's what I did. Built my pitch deck, did the rounds for about 8 months, and all I heard were, right, it's like, hey, you're not growing fast enough. Education is not as sexy a space. bottom line after 8 months of trying to fundraise, ended up with $0 in my hands. So in person, I had kind of the opportunity to experience that, and I think as I exited the business and had the opportunity to eventually raise angel money, and then a round, let's call it, from an institutional investor later on, had the opportunity to kind of see through the rearview mirror in a way why those challenges existed, and kind of what are the ways in which the venture industry works, and why some things work for that industry and why some others don't. And so when we got together with Keith and reconnected, he had the experience from the venture side of being able to see lots of businesses and having to choose which ones met his model, and in many cases he had to say no to other businesses that were good businesses but did not have that hockey stick growth potential that he needed to get the returns from a traditional venture investor. So that's really kind of bringing those two sides to the equation is what led us to form Novel and say, hey, there has to be a different way to support entrepreneurs that don't fit the standard profile, and what can we do to do that? And that was how Novel was born, and why we chose revenue-based investing as the tool to do it.
And you started this, was it 2 or 3 years ago?
So we launched the fund officially last February, so
Okay.
February of 18, so
Okay.
about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And for those of you listening, you know how we love it when you're interactive. So whether you're on your phone, your computer, or something nearby, go to novelgrowthpartners.com or novelgp.com. And well, not only will you have the ability to access ways to contact them about being involved in your business, there's other information. Now, we didn't clarify this up front. You guys are here in Kansas City, our hometown.
That is correct.
Yeah. So, Keith, your background was in venture capital or institutional investment?
So my most recent background, I was at the Kansas Bioscience Authority making venture investments in early stage life sciences companies around the state of Kansas. And it was in that experience over the course of 6 or 7 years while I was there where I saw a lot of really interesting businesses that we just couldn't invest in. They had revenue, they had great CEOs, product and market, and customers that were paying for those products, but just not the kind of growth that we needed from a seed or Series A perspective. And we didn't have a tool in the toolbox to actually finance those companies, and that was pretty frustrating for me because I found myself saying no a lot and not having an alternative to point those entrepreneurs to. And there just got to be the point where I'd sort of shrugged my shoulders enough times that it occurred to me that, wow, this is probably a pretty massive opportunity if we can figure out how to solve it and provide capital to these entrepreneurs.
Well, I think in general, the value that you guys provide is you fill such a big gap in the fundraising cycle. As an early stage company, most people raise a little bit of seed money, and then they get a little bit of revenue going, and they need to grow, but they're not big enough for a bigger fund to invest in, right? I think somewhere between doing $1 million and $5 million a year in revenue is kind of no man's land. Nobody wants to invest in those companies. Once you get over 5 million or something like that, then everybody comes out of the woodwork and they want to invest. And I think that's what's great about this model is it services that group of companies really, really well, which is probably the vast majority of companies, at least at a certain time. You get the companies in Silicon Valley that go raise a $10 million seed round and some craziness.
Right.
But the vast majority of companies never do any of that, and they're more like StackFi or something, and it fills a great niche. I think it's a really valuable alternative that you guys offer, and it's something. How long has this sort of royalty revenue-based financing been around? For 10 years? How long has this been around?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been around, so the mining industry is kind of where it started. So it's been around, in the abstract for quite a long time. In terms of software businesses, I think it started in the 90s with a guy in Boston, whose name I can't remember. But in earnest, there's been a lot of revenue-based financing or growth in the revenue-based financing industry just in the last, I would say, 18 months. To 2 years. And so it's becoming more and more something that people who run software businesses are having access to.
It reminds me when I watch the Shark Tank,
Oh, here
and
we go.
Mr. Wonderful's
Yeah, yeah.
offers are always like, I'll invest 50 grand, but you got to pay me back 7% or whatever, right? That's what it reminds me of, though.
Well, we
You've heard this before, huh?
We have heard this before.
Can we call you Mr. Wonderful?
Well, you can.
He's been known as Mr. Wonderful long before today. Yeah.
I mean, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary does these.
He's head of marketing for you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah, we just say we're more elegant, charming, and friendlier.
Yeah.
And have more hair.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
speak for yourself.
Much better hair, yes, Carlos.
No comment. No comment. So, we talked about the rise of alternative capital, and since that is the subject, and I know that your fund is revenue based, what are some other alternative forms of capital that you've seen come out of the woodwork along the way? I mean, obviously, even if it's some of these things too, is like, for example, like in the last 10 years, things like the safe note and just different types of iterations of classic funding and financing, or, I mean, whether you've seen it or it's something that you think is cool or whatever, what are a couple other options that are things that are going on in this landscape?
Yes, the interesting thing is that even when you say revenue-based financing or revenue-based investing, because it is relatively new compared to the traditional venture equity financing, that is not a standard, right? So you can go to folks that are doing that in a non-institutional manner, so some individuals that might be creating their own ways to do revenue-based investing. But even when you move to the institutional type of revenue-based investing, there's a variety of tools and instruments that folks are using that try to optimize for one thing or another. So there are folks like Indie VC that are using a related type of instrument that has I would say maybe a little bit more focus on kind of on the equity side. There are folks that are doing some things closer to shorter term type of instruments. So really there's a variety of things that are going out there, and there are some folks that are leveraging more technology as well to do some more automated decisions around what companies would qualify for or not for appropriate investing. So we try to take, I would say, a little bit more hands-on approach in which we really try to understand more about the entrepreneur, understand the company, understand the strategy, and kind of put that human element and our operational experience to bear to say, well, besides what the actual numbers and financials are saying, right? And there has to be a base for that for us to be able to feel good about an investment, but really look at the business and the entrepreneur and see if this is a philosophical alignment in which we can really collaborate, we can help the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur would feel good about working with us as well. So I think it really depends on what type of tool you want to use as an entrepreneur and what's the appropriate type of tool for where you're in your journey. And as Matt was saying, right, is really understand that there's really a tool set, a set of things that you can do, and not everything is appropriate at every time of for every company or for where you're at in your company's life. And that's really understanding that as an entrepreneur is really where the key is.
So, Keith, what have you seen out there that you like, or did you have a comment, Matt?
Well, go ahead. I've got one, but go ahead.
Yeah, we've seen some new firms come out. We don't like any of them. We think we're the best out there. So,
and you can go to novelgp.com and learn more about why.
There's actually quite a lot of innovation, to be serious. There's quite a lot of innovation in this space right now around how the instrument looks. And when we say the instrument, we mean, how the money's actually put to work, whether it looks like debt or it looks like equity that's then repurchased over time by that investor. But the idea of non-dilutive funding or minimally dilutive funding is really hot among entrepreneurs right now. So, I mean, we're seeing tons of innovation. And some of the things that we see, we think are sustainable. Some of the things that we see out there, they're complicated, and I think it's going to be tough to get entrepreneurs to use them. The instrument that we chose is relatively simple, and it's in use around the country by firms like ours. So yeah, there's a ton of innovation out there. I want to come back to the concept that Matt mentioned a minute ago about this being kind of a niche, and also that we call this kind of an alternative. The fact of the matter is, we believe that the number of companies for which this kind of capital is applicable is actually far greater than the number of companies that you can really put venture capital to work, traditional venture capital to work in. And so it feels like a niche because it's new, but we don't think it's actually, this is not really going to be a niche for that long. And we don't think it's going to be alternative for that long either.
Well, the great thing about this model is if you have a company that they can be relatively small, but they're growing, they're profitable, they have a good track record, they can be growing 30-40% a year. They don't have to be lighting the world on fire, right?
That's right.
But if it's a good, solid business that you feel like is going to be around for a while, and if you think they can service the debt and pay the debt back, then it's a good investment,
That's
right?
a great deal.
And it's not like you're handing them $5 million in equity and they got to go light the whole world on fire,
Right.
and hope they become a unicorn company and sell them for $1 billion one day, which is like mostly all Silicon Valley cares about.
Right.
There's so many other companies that are just good businesses that are plotting along, but they still need a couple $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, whatever it is. This is a great niche.
Yeah, well, thank you
for that. So,
yeah. And we try to when we work with a company, we try to actually design the deal in a way that's going to work really well for them. So, it's not every deal looks exactly the same. The parameters are generally configurable. And so we work pretty hard to make sure that when we design a deal with a company, it's going to be something that's going to work for them.
I've realized something already that's alternative about their alternative capital is the other funds or sources or people out there. They want to put money into your company, but they don't want to help. Meaning, like you guys are, and by the way, we've received feedback from one of your companies you've invested in about how amazing your help was, and really offered a lot of insight, especially when it came to sales, and obviously sales cures ails, and the more of them, the better.
Use that
I'm going
quote.
to write that down.
Yeah, well, it's true. It's true.
it's trademarked.
Yeah, it is not by me, so I'm probably infringing there. But so I think the question that I have is a couple of things. Is like, what's the criteria? And I know the answer to this with your fund, but I think it would be good to answer. Like, what's the criteria for a business that you're going to invest in? Like, who qualifies and what kind of amounts are you looking to put into them?
Yeah. So we keep it pretty simple. So the companies that we focus on are enterprise software companies. So we don't normally work with companies that are outside that space. Within enterprise software, it could be any vertical, really. But the companies kind of as a criteria, more specific criteria, need to have at a minimum of 500,000 in ARR or recurring revenue on a yearly basis. And usually our sweet spot is, as Matt well identified, up to about $5 million in annual revenue is kind of a good marker for us. And then growth, which is another one of the key elements, needs to be around the 30% or so, but doesn't need to be dramatically higher than that. And we want them to have a product in market, obviously customers if they're going to have revenue, and enough a diversity of those customers that there's a product market fit already has been figured out, if you will. So those are really the key elements. If a company has those elements in place, generally we'll be able to invest some amount of money. Then the question is, right, is there a good match with the amount of money that the entrepreneur is looking for and the amount of money we can invest and timing and so on. But those are the basic elements.
Those are pretty low, thresholds to hit, right?
Sure.
If you've got a small company and you got some traction, you said $50,000 a month in revenue, right?
Yep, exactly.
If you're not that far along, you
got work to do.
That's
gotta
hard,
work
right?
this,
I mean,
yeah,
that
yeah.
first 40 or 50 is hard, but once you get to that stage, hopefully you're ready for some growth capital, right? And so this could be good growth capital to keep it going.
Maybe this is a silly question, but I'm assuming that with revenue-based funding, and I think we should probably maybe visit how that works, because it sounds upfront, but first off, that's going to be a preset percentage of your revenue that gets repaid to, do you classify as the lender at that point? Is that how that works? Or is it an investor? Like, I mean, how is that written?
We're an investor, but it's using a debt instrument.
Okay.
Yeah, and so one of the key elements of difference is that we're taking early stage venture risk because it's uncollateralized.
Okay. Oh,
right?
I see.
So that's the key difference, against a bank or other elements that are looking for either I'm going to have a personal guarantee, which is my collateral, or I'm going to have a building or your house or some element that. So we're taking the risk, early venture stage risk, because we're basically saying we're going to, in a sense, invest on the basis of the business and the entrepreneur, right? Just like the traditional venture equity world does. The difference is how our instrument is set up, which is more of a debt instrument instead of an equity instrument.
Yeah, and you asked how does that payback actually work? It is, some people call this royalty-based financing. And so to pay us back, the company pays a set percentage, a preset percentage of their monthly gross cash receipts from product and service sales, is how we say it. So it's not the revenue line item on the P&L, it's actually how the company is doing in terms of collecting revenue from its customers.
So,
and that's how the payments actually come in.
And what is that percentage usually?
Anywhere from 4 to 8%.
Okay.
So is this a sliding scale? Does it become more advantageous or beneficial for a company to, like, let's just say that here comes your capital, business grows, does it benefit is this all predetermined, like here's the amount and it doesn't matter how long it takes, or does it benefit the company financially to get this money back into your account faster?
Yes, but maybe what might help is like a concrete example. So if a company, let's say it's at $1 million in revenue, so a good rule of thumb for us to use is that we can invest about 25 to 30% of that revenue. So let's say a $250,000 check. So what we would expect then is we agree at the beginning on the terms, which are the length of time that instrument is going to be available, and then a cap, which is basically your cost of capital. You can think about it. So normally it's going to be between 1.5 to 2.2 times the amount invested. So let's say we invest $250,000, and the cap would be 2 times. Then we would expect a payment of $500,000, usually within a 3-year time frame, that we would collect through those monthly royalties. Again, somewhere between 4 and 8%, so let's say 6% a month. So 6% a month of your cash that's coming in the company will come to us until it adds up to those $500,000. And so the one benefit for the entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs that are in a vertical in an industry that is seasonal, is that when you don't have cash coming in, or if you have problems collecting, then you are not forced then to outlay money when you don't have it. So the way we put it is that when the entrepreneur has good cash months, we'll have good months. If the entrepreneur has bad cash months, we'll have not so good months as well.
But typically the terms are concrete up front.
Oh,
yes, yeah, we
Okay.
definitely,
Okay, so then this was maybe the silly question. So then why be involved with the company? Because
Sure.
theoretically you're locked in. And I understand. I mean, like I said, the question might seem silly, but I think it's a good point to answer, because that's clearly an added value that you're providing at that point.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, we don't view this as transactional, as a bank would, and certainly a bank wouldn't help, right?
Right.
But it also just so happens that we have some expertise internally and also in our network that we think can help the companies in our portfolio. And by bringing that expertise to bear, we actually help those companies grow faster. And that obviously helps the companies, but it also helps us too.
Yeah,
because the
theoretically
faster the
puts the
company
money
grows,
back in.
yeah, exactly.
Sure.
The faster they grow, the faster we get paid back. So.
So we have some upside, right? So in the standard traditional venture equity, your upside is the net cash that you can get in. So you might get 10x, 20x your money at some point in time, or you may not, right? But that's the opportunity. In our case, the net cash on cash is already decided and agreed with the entrepreneur in the beginning. Again, as an example, 2x the money that we invested. Our opportunity for upside is that money is returned to us faster,
Sure.
so that we can put it to work in other companies. So we still have an incentive, right, to try to help that
Right.
entrepreneur, and so we're aligned. And if we do that well, then the entrepreneur will grow faster, and they'll build value in their company faster.
So we've talked a lot about this. Did you want to talk about some other alternative besides just the revenue base?
No, I mean, I think that's from my own research and poking around, I mean, that seems to be the prevalent version of alternative capital. I mean, if we were to just list, I mean, do you have a couple other things that you can think of? Because I really feel like the revenue or royalty based is the one that...
I've got a good one.
Yeah.
Another good one is factoring contracts. So if you say StackFi, we just signed up a customer that's going to pay us $120,000 a year. Let's say I could get a 3-year contract out of them. That contract's worth $360,000. So can I take that to a type of lender that might give me 80 cents on the dollar or something like that?
Sure.
And then I could pull all that money forward. And then ultimately, a lot of the times, then the customer ends up paying the lender direct instead of paying me. So it's like a loan almost.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, that's the same as like AR.
Because I had
AR financing is the flip side of that. Is you've already performed the services, and now I don't know, I'll tell you what, even your best customers have a tendency to sometimes pay slow.
So back in my
Does that make them your best customers still?
I don't think so.
No, but it happens, you know, and especially like
I guess it depends on how you define best customer.
Well, the bigger the company you're dealing with, the slower the payment sometimes, which is frustrating because you've talked back to like the Vin Solution days about, sometimes as an early stage company you see this big behemoth like whale of a client coming in, and it's sometimes not without the experience of having been through that, it's hard to understand a whale makes waves as it swims by, and there's some other things that can be challenging. And if you have to, I don't know, some companies just aren't going to pay you quickly. They're not going to give you a net now payment, and you got to give some consideration to that, especially if they're a pretty large portion of the financing. Maybe not as much with software, but with things that you have to build or manufacture, or any type of hardware or product. Walmart doesn't pay you up front.
Right.
Well, so back in the Vin Solutions days, we sold a CRM system, right? And so kept track of all the customers' information and records and all that stuff. We had a competitor that I won't name, but they sold a similar product, but theirs was not a SaaS product. It was not an online cloud product. And their product was more historical before SaaS became as popular. But the way that people bought their product is they bought a server and they installed it on site there and used it, and they factored every single contract. And the customers actually hated it because they basically knew that they bought this product and now the company didn't even give a shit anymore because they sold the note to the bank and got all the money. And then provided terrible customer service too, because they're like, what are you going to do? You owe the bank this money now because we sold the contract. So it was like, it created a very adversarial relationship. But it was interesting because that company had no recurring revenue at all. They sold every single contract. And we actually put them out of business because of this. Because when those 3-year contracts would come up, they had to renew them for like another 3 years, and we were stealing all of their business. So they couldn't sell any more contracts. Like, it's interesting because if you, like in that example I gave, it's like a $300,000 contract. You don't have to do very many of those, and that adds up. Like, you do 1 or 2 of those a month, and it's a lot of money, right? Well, if you don't do any a month, you got 0. So it's an interesting dynamic you get yourself into if you start selling contracts like that. It's like crack, and you got to keep selling them every month. But
I think one of the least desirable but probably most highly used forms of alternative capital is like the little short bridge loans, like literally capital loans.
Like those fintech companies that do very short-term, high interest,
like Cabbage, things like that.
So you asked about some of the other forms of alternative capital out there. That's certainly one of them that we see a lot, and we see a lot of companies that have that kind of debt on their books, right? Short-term, high interest, sometimes even getting daily payments. Sort of like a merchant cash advance, right? So there's a lot of innovation in the space around that, and so you see a ton of new companies coming out using that kind of model. I'm not sure that the model is all that innovative, but the algorithms underlying how they actually make their decisions, I think that's the innovative part.
Merchant cash advance is another good example of alternative finance. We haven't
average
mentioned
credit card receipts.
So at StackFi, if we get $300,000 a month in credit cards or whatever, I actually had American Express reach out to me. They're like, hey, you do $100,000 a month
Yep.
in American Express receipts, we'll basically skim off the top of that a certain amount and then give you the rest and
We
do it as like a loan.
We did that at the ticket company sometimes, especially right before like the holiday season, because I used to own a ticket brokerage, and you don't make payments when you're buying things for concerts and events. You got to pay for all that up front.
Yeah.
But come holiday season, everything in the world would go on sale in the same 2-week period, and we'd have a little bit of the carry on that was really short. It was sometimes a week or two, but just being able to leverage that kind of stuff up, and some of that is like PayPal is a good example. Like PayPal would literally take, you could based on what your average money that flowed through them was, you could decide on an amount of capital, and then they'd say, we'll take 10, 20, 30, or 40% of every payment that comes in. Now, we did that a couple times, and my accountant wanted to strangle me after, because you would, rather than getting $10, you would get $7.
Yep.
And then a different line item would be like $3 repayment on this loan, or something like that. And it was
Accounting nightmare.
It was a little bit of an accounting nightmare, but
And that's
And Stripe even coming up
Stripe,
with something.
yeah.
Are
like
they doing
So-
that now too?
Yeah, they
Yep.
just started that service.
a massive.
right.
Yeah, they've launched a massive effort along those lines.
Yeah.
And so
Interesting.
that's one of the, I think, kind of when you think as entrepreneur, kind of there are a couple of categories which are, all those services to provide capital, and then when you think about strategic capital, because certainly if you want, and you gotta weigh kind of the amount of work and the amount of capital that you need, how long you need it, and the cost, versus what are you really trying to accomplish, right? And so that one of the things that when we talk to companies, we say if you're just really looking for money, you might be able to find money that's a little bit lower cost than that, or that it's faster and easier to get, because we actually are trying to understand your business and trying to understand you, and we're making an investment that is gonna tie us, mid to long term.
Yeah, you guys are going
Right,
to write a
so-
bigger check. I mean, some of these
Exactly.
things are,
That's right.
these small
Yeah.
things are like, and your opinion on what amount of money is
It's
small or
right.
not
It
is
changes
varies from
the situation,
everyone.
right.
But I mean,
Right.
typically those kind of things that we just talked about. Now, contract factoring or AR is a little
Yeah.
different, but
Yep.
the like merchant stuff or different things. I mean, those are typically going to cap out at a pretty small amount,
That's
and
true.
and the repayment on them is aggressive. I
That's
mean,
very true.
You're going to start paying like
Tomorrow.
maybe.
Yeah.
And take a look at the terms too, because by the time if you're doing it over a extended term like 6 or 9 months or something, you're going to be paying the same amount of fees and interest on a very, very, very small amount of principal at the end, which is kind of interesting.
With
So,
very little strategic value.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, at that point,
Yeah.
unless, I mean, I don't know. So I think that you mentioned the crack, you can get
Yeah.
in these cycles
Yeah.
of constantly paying it back, and you're paying the juice it's like the mafia.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming to collect the vig on Fridays, and you better have it or they might break your leg. So-
Recurring revenue is a beautiful thing. And
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, and then some of those companies. Well, you had a neighbor that was in the predatory lending business.
I did.
How did that work out for him? He's in jail now, right?
I think it worked great until he lied about being on the
Until he
Indian
went to jail.
reservation and then
Until
committed fraud and
and then they-
terms and agreements and disclosures.
And then they came and raided his house and auctioned off all this
Yeah.
stuff, and yeah, that was kind of it was a rough time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a Netflix series about
There
that.
is.
Yeah.
There is.
Dirty Money?
Dirty Money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see Matt's
To add it
house
to
in
my
that.
list.
You can. My house is in there.
Is that right?
After it came
Yeah.
out, I called Matt the next
Famous.
morning. I was like, dude, I'm watching your house on Netflix.
Get an
He said, what?
autograph.
So, yeah.
I live 2 doors down.
We don't
so.
have to say which one, but it was there. So, yeah.
You're giving tours now?
No.
Yeah,
Oh.
totally. It's like,
No, there on that house has a big piece of paper on the front door now that says owned by the government.
Did you buy
blah,
that
blah,
guy's McLaren or whatever it was?
blah. No.
I'm pretty sure.
Not yet.
Didn't they haul
Not
that
yet.
off in the documentary?
Yeah, they did. All
They're like
Ferraris.
towing it out, and they're like taking out shrubs and
Yeah.
bushes because they're not making the turn. And yeah, I thought there was a level of like smitten arrogance that came with that. I was like, why would you do this documentary? They're like, I mean, the
why would he
well,
actually participate?
Yeah, I was like, what's your upside?
I wondered the same thing.
Because
He's
when
like
you
being
watch it,
interviewed,
you're like, dude, like they're trying to like, I am being wronged. I am the victim here, and you're like,
you're kind of a fraudster.
Maybe not so much, but you should definitely get back to racing. Maybe out of the country.
So that's called Dirty Money, and it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating. There's other episodes on there about
I just heard you get a
pharmaceutical companies and Volkswagen and
Volkswagen was one. The other one was
Yeah.
the banks.
I think there's even one about Trump.
There was one about
add it to my list.
There was one about the banks that were one. I can't remember which bank it was. Maybe HSBC that was knowingly kind of overlooking cartel money.
No.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The Volkswagen thing was really fascinating on there.
Yeah.
I just want to interject here that there is no cause for the two of you to be talking about fraud while we're on the podcast here.
Oh yeah, no, you are definitely not in that ballpark. And with that, we should play Mixtape.
Yeah.
So
let's mix it up.
So I know you guys are big supporters of the guys at Divvy HQ. I should tell you, do not play Mixtape with Brody.
Oh.
He's a veteran.
I listened to the.
Did you
podcast
listen to
with
that
those
one?
guys. Yeah, it was really
you don't
good.
play with Brody.
No.
He's gone through the deck a couple times. So
Wow.
mixtapethegame.com. By the way, Joel Johnson, the creator of Mixtape, was nice enough. We have Mixtape.
I saw a couple cases.
Promo decks.
Yeah, I saw that.
You guys are not. Well, I don't know. We haven't really made up the rules. If they don't win, I don't know if we'll give them a deck. I mean, would they be worthy?
They got a 50% chance.
I know Carlos
All right,
wants
all
to
right.
shoot this money
Let's
gun.
go.
He
Let's
tried
do
to
this.
fire
Let's do
the
this.
thing up. So, all right. So, mixtapethegame.com. I keep saying digital version coming. I'll just say someday. Trying to get it right so it doesn't suck. All right. So, I'm going to read a scenario. We're all going to pick a song. We will vote afterward. You cannot vote for yourself. What song sums up your adolescence?
Shoot.
Oh.
I'm going with Me So Horny by Two Live Crew. I think that's probably the best answer, yeah. Hey,
I guess I got to go with Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice.
Ooh, classic.
I would like more explanation on that,
Yeah.
but we'll let...
So I'm thinking. I'm probably overthinking.
I was gonna respond Shakira, hips don't lie, to any question.
Oh man.
Carlos's hips in his adolescence. Okay.
Sums up what?
Or maybe it was just Shakira.
Yeah,
Was it
maybe
more about
just-
Shakira?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The song that sums up my adolescence.
So while he's thinking, really, a friend of mine was Shakira's manager.
Really?
Whoa.
Yeah.
I bet Carlos would like to know more about that.
Yeah. Can we be friends?
Yes. You're overthinking
I
this,
am
Harrington.
overthinking it. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I can only think of one song, and
Then
it's
you got to name it.
Boys in the Hood by NWA.
There you
And
go.
I don't know why.
There you go. So we have Me So Horny. I feel like I might have won that right
I was
at that
not, by the
moment.
way, a gangster in my adolescence. But I did listen to.
Yeah. However, I was horny in my adolescence. That happens. And then what we have, Ice Ice Baby.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of really, really questionable rap here.
Yeah.
And then Shakira.
And Shakira.
We have Boys in the Hood,
Which is harmless.
by NWA, and we'll let Carlos just go with Shakira's entire library.
Yeah. The whole thing.
So we have to vote, and I will vote for. I don't do this often, but I'm gonna vote for Watson mainly just because I
Ooh.
like Ice Ice Baby.
I'll vote for Watson.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
That's a solid one. Yeah, that's I didn't see that one coming, but
You're
Yeah.
gonna win.
Once I heard
You
it-
already won.
Yep. There you go.
Wow.
You already
Once-
won.
once I heard it,
Congratulations. So I think since you already have a mixtape
So
deck,
we win a prize, right?
well, I think we're gonna let Watson decide which one of you two wins the prize.
Oh, this will be interesting. This will be really interesting.
You have 3 seconds.
All right,
Watson.
I'm going to let Carlos.
There's no contest.
I'm voting for Carlos.
Boom.
All right, we're gonna let
Because his hips don't lie.
Yeah.
We're gonna let Carlos fire the money gun.
Ooh, I like this. We need to get one of this. I could get used to
I'll
that.
tell you what.
I don't even know what to say about that. That's
Of all,
that's.
I enjoyed it too much.
Look at all the
I've
Look at all the
got a
cash.
video of that we will post on at Startup Hustle Podcast on the gram. Carlos, I do have to say, and I think Watson can confirm this, the overall range at which you fired the money may have been the broadest.
I like the spread.
Maximum
Spread
square
the wealth,
inches were
spread
covered.
the wealth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had people shoot Watson in the face with it.
Yeah.
We've had them
That
shoot
seems
themselves.
rude. You don't know where those dollar bills have been.
Well, we do.
I kind of do, and that's why I don't want to touch them.
I saw a $2 bill.
If you
Yeah,
go,
there's a
if,
$2 bill.
There is a
That's
two.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
great.
if you go home and your wife says, "Why is there glitter on you?" Just blame the money gun.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, if you get a chance, go to novelgrowthpartners.com. You can also go to novelgp.com. While you're on the internet, stop by and visit fullscale.io to learn more about what Matt and I's tech services business does. You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, a whole lot of other places. So as we round out this episode that was once again brought to you by startuphustle.io. Hang on, I'm making my quota.
Startuphustle.io.
Oh no, fullscale.io. See, I got distracted. I'd like to hand the mic over to you guys, and you're both seasoned entrepreneurs. You have a lot of history in the space of funding, and you guys can have a few minutes here to kind of freestyle in regards to maybe giving people advice on what some of the better ways to raise money or what they aren't. You can really go however you want to go. Have at it.
Go.
All right. Well, look, we talk to entrepreneurs every day, and one of the biggest challenges that we see is just that there are so many companies out there that just aren't a great fit for venture, and we are one of a growing number of firms out there that solve the capital problem for growing companies, and in our case, growing software companies, in an interesting and we think useful and meaningful way. When we talk to entrepreneurs, we try really hard to understand what it is they're trying to raise capital for, and what is the right amount of money for that entrepreneur and for that business. And that's something that I think I would definitely urge entrepreneurs to think through very carefully, is what is the right amount of money for my business? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish, and what do I reasonably need to actually get to that milestone? And that is not always something that's so easy to really figure out. So that's the advice that we give to almost every entrepreneur that we talk to is, you think you need to raise this much money, let's really talk about what it's going to take to get you to the milestone that you think is most important coming up.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I think as an entrepreneur, don't just buy into the whole hype and reading the TechCrunch and the news media of Silicon Valley and believe that has to be your journey to be successful. Is understand what you want to accomplish with your business, what you want to accomplish personally, professionally, financially. And once you really understand what that journey is, and no journey is a bad one, if you really want to be the dominant global force of an industry and financially exit as a double unicorn IPO, then that is your journey, then that is fine. You might have to do certain things to raise money and to build your business to be successful, if that is what you want. But if you have a different path, then there might be a different path for you, especially from a capital perspective on how you build your business and how and where you get that capital to build your business. So consider that. And the other part to remember is and hopefully Matt agrees with me. I mean, this process takes time. I don't know where sometimes entrepreneurs, say, hey, I'm building this business and I'm going to exit in 3 years, and they just started building the business last year. That doesn't happen. In most cases, businesses take time to build. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? And if you don't understand that, you will be disappointed in most cases, and in the process, you might make some bad decisions. So if you're signing up for entrepreneurship, buckle up. It's going to be hard, and it's going to take time.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
It's probably a 7 to 10 year journey
easy,
or something
yeah,
like that.
easy, yeah.
Mr. Watson, do you have any closing comments?
I think it's most people don't necessarily think about debt as an option of raising capital, and so I think what we've talked about today is a great example of where debt is an option maybe people don't think of. Be that from Cabbage or something like that, there's short-term stuff, but what they offer is a much more strategic type of debt instrument that could be really valuable to a lot of companies that are between, $50,000 a month in revenue or $500,000 a month in revenue or even higher. It's a great alternative way to raise capital besides just straight venture, equity type stuff.
So I think you guys, echoed some similar sentiment, but I'm gonna close this out with a different layer of advice. I think before you go to try to raise money from anybody, be ready. Just be ready. Like, come proper, be prepared. Have I've seen so many people pass me, email me, upload, whatever it is, different stuff, and you look at it and you're like, man, this is like maybe the worst presentation or outline that I've ever seen. It's either under-explained or it's over-explained. I think really in the end, keep it simple. Define the problem that you're trying to solve, how you're going to solve it, and have some, no one expects your projections and your estimates to be 100% because they can't be. They're always going to be wrong on some level, but keep it reasonable and just, and simple. I mean, I think that anybody that's ever seen a deal from someone, they usually, the offerings lack some desirability on a lot of regards.
There's no perfect deal, right?
Yeah, but if you want to be taken seriously, take your offering and your presentation and all of that seriously. So speaking of taking things seriously, I'm going to get back to work.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Yep. See you next time.
Thank you
very
guys.
much for
Thank
having
you.
us.